This is Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Lamid Vav, and we're holding on Amid Vav Amid Aleph. We're about 12 lines into the Amid as we continue the discussion of the Isser Daraisa learned that of the Pasik in Devarim that teaches Banim Atem Hashem Elokechem, your children to Hashem. Lo tiskaidu, says the Pasik. Do not cut yourself. And you should not make a bald spot. Literally, kaireach is bald. Bein einechem, between your eyes, lemeis, for a mace. And yesterday on Lamed Hayim and Beis, which brought us to top of Lamed Vavam and Aleph, the Gemara discussed whether this halacha is relevant only to Bnei Aaron, and we learned that it's also Benois Aaron are excluded. And the question was, why? And we said we have a special pasuk. We're in the middle of discussing this Isser Daraisa of cutting oneself over the dead. Says the Gemara about 12 lines down, the first line is Karcha B'Raisha. So the pasuk taught us that where does this Isser apply? Loisesimu Karcha Bein Einechem Lameis. But the pasuk said B'Raisha, that was the previous pasuk. Ma tal muloymar. Why does the pasuk say b'roisham lefi shenemar? Because the pasuk says so yachol, from that pasuk I would have thought lo yechayev ela bein einayim, that where is one obligated, where is the isser of making a bald spot, of cutting oneself in a sign of mourning. And of course, this is an extreme sign of mourning which almost negates that there's a larger sense to life if someone is going and cutting themselves over a mace. So I would have thought that this is applicable only being in ayim, as the pasuk says. Minayin, the rabbis kol roish, the entire head. Tamaleimar beroisham lachayev al haroish kibin inayim, that you're obligated for cutting one's head like between the eyes. But now this pasuk is only written by Kaihanim, Sheriba Ba'em Akasa Mitzvahs Yiseras, as we mentioned in the previous daf, which is always the contrast, that maybe these halachas are specifically for a kohen that has many extra mitzvahs over a Yisrael. Yisrael Minalan, where do we know that a Yisrael is included in this Isser Daraisa as well? Nemar kan karcha v'nemar lahaloin karcha. Ma kan chayev al kol karcha v'karcha v'chayev al haroish kibein einayim. As we concluded the previous year in learning that not only is it an Isser Daraisa, but it's also an Isser Daraisa for each cut one makes. You would think if someone makes 5 cuts I should say, in the face, that it's only one Isser. So we learned that no, it's each a separate Isser. So it says the Gemara, not only is it each a separate Isser, it's also Chayv al Haroish on the face, Kibin Einayim. Af lahalon by Yisrael, Chayv al kol karcha v'karcha, and as well, Chayv al Haroish Kibin Einayim. Says the Gemara, Ma lahalon al hames, Avkan al hames, that the Isser only applies between for a mace. So we're suggesting right now that maybe the Isser, as yesterday's daf discussed, the Isser of Ashchasas Zokein and the Sakifu Pasr Sheichem, rounding the corners of the face, removing one's face. We got into this discussion as we said women are excluded from this Isser. Says the Gemara, but wait, maybe it only applies if done over a mace. Imkei nichtav kra karach, my karcha, shmas mina tarti, that making this bald spot applies not only on a mace and any time. Rava suggests a different reason. Hainu taima de isi, another reason for isi, and you can look at the top of your amud, and isi was introduced by Abaya on the top of this amud, and isi taught us karcha b'minei Aaron. But says Rav, I'll give you another reason for isi. Another reason for isi, which is about 12 lines from the wide lines. Tiyalif bein einechem mitfilin. Mal halon, as we learned a few days ago, a special pasuk that women are parted from tefillin. We'll remind ourselves, we learned that from Talmud Torah. Afkan nashe peturos. V'Rava my time elamar kabaya. So why Lamaisa is Rava arguing Abaya in the understanding of isi? Karach karcha lo mashma. Because Abaya's final punchline was he had to differentiate and say the extra karacha teaches us it applies elsewhere. Rava says it's not mashma. V'Abaya maitem lamer karava. Why Lamaisa does an Abaya say like Rava that the woman, the reason we learn it out from is like tefillin that they're pater. Amar lach. Responds Abaya, tefillin gufayu. Me'achag amar lach. This is gufa where we learn out tefillin. Where are you making this bald spot on the height of the head? That's where the tefillin are placed. Both Abaye and Rav have other reasons knowing that it applies to women. So why does the pasuk have to introduce this abanim atem Hashem lekechem? Haimi bailelech letanya. Banim atem Hashem lekechem. Bizman shatem noagim minag banim. Ata kruyim banim. When you're acting like children, you're called children. Ein atem noagim minag banim. Ein atem kruyim banim. If you're not acting like children, you're not called children. Divrei Rav Yehuda. Rameir Aimer famously says, Rameir, Benkach ubenkach atem kriyim banim. We're always called banim to Hashem, shenemar, banim sichlem hema. V'aimer, and the pasuk continues in the first wide line. Banim loy aman bam, v'aimer zera mizaram, banim mashchisim, v'aimer v'hay b'makam, sheyemer lehem loyami atem, yemer lehem b'ni kelchai. My v'aimer, why don't you all these psukim referencing Klal Yisrael being banim even when we're not necessarily at the height of our avodas Hashem? Chitem esechlu demikri banai kileslu hemnusa loy mikri banai tashma v'aimer. That's the second pasuk. Banim lo uman bam chitem v'chlasbu hemnusa who demikri banim. Keep halchul aviz chavim, but maybe when one is down to an idol lo mikri banim tashma v'aimer zera mizaram banim ashchisim. That even at such a low, one is worshiping an idol, he's still a son to God. Excuse me, Banim Aliyah lo mikri, he's not a real son. And what? How apropos the daf of Saim Gedalia, as we're middle of the Aseret Simei Tshuva, comforting words of the Gemara, that regardless wherever one has fallen, whatever one has done, they are still considered abanim atem l'Hashem l'keichem, teaches Rebbe Meir. And we continue with the Mishnah on the bottom of Lamed Vav Amud Aleph. Says the Mishnah, Hasmicha, smichais, leaning on an animal, Vatinufais, waving the karbanos, Vagashais, bringing it close, Vakamitzas, doing the three fingers, Vaktairais, bringing the ketairas, Vamalikais, and shachting the bird with the fingernail, Vakabolis, catching the blood, Vazais, bringing the blood, Nohagin ba'anashim, v'loy b'nashim. Women are not allowed to perform those avodos. Chutz! Aside for minchas saita, the mincha of the carbon saita, the unizira shehein manifais, and a nazir that a woman does, the tenufa. We discussed this in Gemara in Saita, the unique aspect of the carbon saita, that the woman is allowed to do the tenufa even though she is normally not allowed to. Says the Gemara, where do we know all these entities are not done by women? Semicha is tersev. With regard to smicha, that's the leaning, that's the viduy on the animal. Daber al b'nei Yisrael, v'samach b'nei Yisrael semchem b'nei Yisrael semches. Tenufa is waving the animal that the pasuk says, Daber al b'nei Yisrael v'heinif. Speak to the b'nei Yisrael, they shall wave b'nei Yisrael manifim es b'nei Yisrael manifim. Hagasha is bringing it close. Tersev zois teres ha-mincha hikre v'yisa b'nei Aaron v'lo b'nei Saron. Kemitza is tersev avial b'nei Aaron v'kamat b'nei Aaron v'lo b'nei Saron. Haktara is tersev iktira isa b'nei Aaron v'lo b'nei Saron. Hamalika, 2 lines to the bottom, tersev u'malak v'hiktir v'hizkish malika l'haktara. V'kabala is tersev ikrivu b'nei Aaron. And the pasuk says Vikrivu b'nei Aaron v'amar mar, and teaches mar Vikrivu, Vikrivu. I just wanted to point out, I think I read the Mishnah incorrectly. Vaktarais means burning of the animal. It doesn't necessarily refer specifically to the Ketairas, I said, I apologize, refer to the Haktara, the burning of the karbanos. Ve'krivu b'nei Aaron v'amar amar ve'krivu zu kabbalas adam. As we turn over to Lamed Vavam base, that is the catching, the accepting of the blood. Continues the Gemara, hazayos, the sprinkling of the karbanos, hazah dehecha. Which hazah? What hazah are we referring to? Ida para, ever the hazah of the para duma, Elazar kasaba. Says Elazar in the pasuk, meaning it's a special avodah that only Elazar could do, not other kaihanim, and certainly, as Rashi articulates in the second line, certainly a woman cannot do such an avodah. Ida panim. Ever talking about the hazayah of the panim on the inside of the paraychas by the mizbeach hazav, and that's done by whom? The kohen mashiach baram davar shel tzibar hakohen hamashuach kasaba, and certainly again not a woman. Ela hazah, which sprinkling referring to the ben oif da'asiyah bekal v'chaymer mi ben soin uma ben soin shloi kavala kohen l'shchitasai. Yet kavala kohen la'azah asai, the kohen has to do the sprinkling of such a carbon. Ben oif, when it comes to the carbon of an oif of a bird, by the chatas oif. Shekavlam koim lemli klasai, as we saw the malika is the shechting of the bird with the fingernail of the kohen. Ein oidin a kalvachaymer shikvalei lahazah, that the kohen has to do the hazah, sprinkling of that blood as well, and that's the reason why it cannot be done by a woman. Chutz, there was an exception of two karbanos that women do have more involvement, which is the mincha, the karban mincha of the saita, and the nizira. Amar le Rav Eliezer Rav Yeshaya didayrei loy tasev akarech ad amar li lahashmaitza. You can't sit down until you tell me the following teaching. Minayin the mincha saita shatuna tenufa. Where do we know the karban mincha of a saita requires waving? Says Gemara Minalan migufa ksiv. The pasuk says ve'hein v'zeh mincha. Says you shall wave it. Ela tenufa b'bailim minolan. That was the question. We already know that the bailim, that the owner has to be the one to do the tenufa, which is the waving of the animal minolan. Asya yad yad mishlamim. We learn out from Xer Shavar of cover in shlamim. Ksiva chavalaka koyin miyad hoyisha. Koyin takes from the hand of the woman. Ksiva hasa by the shlamim. Yadav tiviyana makan koyin aflahalon koyin. That the koyin has to be the one to do the tenufa. Similarly, says the Gemara, malhalan bailim, afkan bailim, that the bailim have to want to do it. Haketzad. So how do you have a tenufa done by both the bailim and the koyin as well? Koyin machlis yadoi tachas yad bailim umeinif. Koyin places his hands under the hands of the bailim and does the tenufa. Ashkechan soita nizira minalon. Asya kaf kaf misaita. We learn it out from a special Xer Shava by the Saita. This is where we learn out that these two karbanos, the mincha Saita and the Nazira, are the two times that the woman would be allowed, is required to do the tenufa, to do the waving of the mincha together with the kohen. And we'll pick it up from the Mishnah the next year, just to foreshadow. The Mishnah begins, Kol mitzvah shlitzliya ba'aretz. Any mitzvah that is totally in Eretz Yisrael, Einoi noiheges ela ba'aretz, is only noig in Eretz Yisrael. V'sheinoi tlu ba'aretz, any mitzvah is not totally in Eretz Yisrael, noigets bein ba'aretz, bein b'chutz la'aretz, chutz, and the Mishnah will continue with the exceptions, which we'll pick up for the next year, b'siyata dishmaya.